Why did you become a railroader?
Well, the reason I became a railroader is I was freshly out of the military and I needed a good paying job with good benefits so I could support my family. And I knew that the railroader made good money. You were gone a lot of the time, but definitely a job you could provide for your family with.
And what do you do?
So I'm a locomotive engineer, so I'll drive a train between Whitefish and Spokane and Whitefish and Havre. We'll take a train over, spend the night, and come back the following day.
Is your job important?
Yeah, I think my job's very important. Without the railroader, every item that you use every day in your everyday way of life, we provide it to you. We make sure that it gets there. From the petroleum that goes in your car, to the food that you eat, to the fertilizer you dump on your lawn, everything travels by rail.
How did our family get started with the railroad?
Well, back in the 20s, when Claude Korb was just a young man, there were jobs available in summers, both at the tie plant and the mill, and they had to find a job to help not just support their families, but also their parents, kind of what they did back in those days. So he went to work for the tie plant. My other grandfather, George Ruby, he was married by then, and they came here too for a job, and that's how they both ended up working for the railroad.
What did they do in their career?
Well, my grandfather, Claude Korb, he was an engineer on that engine. The S1 and S2. We have the S2 here at the museum. It's sitting outside. And then he worked at the A and B, that's the edging and boring, and towards the end of his career. That was drilling the holes and edging them, the ties level, so when they went in the ground they were level and of course easy to spike down with holes bored through them. And my grandfather, George Ruby, he was a brakeman down here from 32 to 42, I believe, when the Summers Lumber Company took over the railroad operations from Summers to Marion, over part of the branch line and then the original main line from Kalispell to the coast. And then when that job went back to Whitefish Cruise, he finished his career in the tie plant working as a tie bucker.
How did Grandpa Gene become a railroader?
Well, I think he was born with a switch lantern in his hand. He enjoyed trains when he was a child, is what he always told me, and there's pictures of him when he was quite young, riding around with the Great Northern Cruise here and down here switching with them. And right out of high school, he went to work on the track department, and a year later he got on into train service in Whitefish, and he retired as a conductor out of Whitefish.
What prompted you to become a railroader?
Well, I guess I enjoyed watching the trains as a child too. I remember sitting on the old viaduct at Whitefish watching them switch cars down below when we'd come home from the city beach on our bicycles and sit up there for half an hour, 45 minutes watching them beat cars down in the rail yard. And when I graduated out of high school, there was lots of opportunities, whether it's an aluminum plant or the mills, and the railroad was hiring. And it was a good job. I enjoyed it. I spent a little over 41 years there.
What changed in the railroad between generations?
Well, technology's changed a lot of stuff, communications. Equipment was a big thing. When I hired out, there was still a lot of what they call friction bearings. You had to have there was a big journal box. You had a pad in there, and you kept oil in there to keep the bearings lubricated. Kind of slowed the operation down as roller bearings became more dominant on everything, which everything is now. That's changed a lot. Locomotives are better. When I hired out, diesels had been around for quite some time, but they were low horsepower. A 1,500 horsepower engine was a big engine, and now they're about 4,700 horse, and you don't have the problems with them like you used to.
What is the Summers Company Town project?
Well, it's a museum that a bunch of us locals got going here. The S1 behind us, that was one of the locomotives that the Great Northern bought for the tie plant, and this is the new one. It was built in 1929. And we got that back here, so we decided to build a museum around it. It's kind of the focal point of our museum, and with all the history of Summers being a great northern town, owned and operated by the railroad, truly a company town. And that's what we're trying to save, the history of this town by the Summers Company Town Project.